Welcome to Church of the Rock from Winnipeg. Stay tuned to this week's thought-provoking message from Pastor Mark Hughes.
Well, my message today is entitled Serving on Purpose. And I realized after I wrote it and sent it out how incredibly goofy that sounds. Like, what does that mean? Like, serving on purpose instead of by accident? And, that's not what we normally do. But every once in a while, you do actually serve by accident, and you actually make yourself accidentally useful. And there's a great story I love about this woman. She was a widow, and she had 3 kids, and she was struggling, and she didn't have money to pay her bills or to buy food. And she would open her windows of her apartment, and she would cry out to God, oh, God, please provide food. I know you are. I know you're a faithful God. Her next-door neighbor was an atheist, and he was listening to this and getting sick of it every morning, and he thought to himself, I'm going to fix that lady. And so what he did was we went and bought some groceries and set them at her door. And one morning she opened the door, and there were the groceries, and she went, praise the Lord, I knew you would provide. And he jumped out of the door, and he said, God didn't provide those groceries for you, I did. And she went, praise the Lord even more. I knew he would provide, but I would have never thought he would have made the devil pay for it. And so sometimes we serve on purpose, sometimes we serve by accident. But what I'm really talking about today is that we want to serve out of the purpose that God has given in us and put in our lives. Our mission in this church is to help people to know God, live free, and to find purpose. And let me tell you that to find your purpose, there's only one way you can really do that in life. And that is you have to learn to serve others. And my definition of the greater purpose in one's life is this, and it's to serve a purpose greater than yourself. And you can go through life never serving anybody but yourself. You can do that. And you know what? You could actually end up being successful doing that. You might make some money doing that. You might even become famous. There are famous people that have never done another thing for another human being. But let me promise you this. You will never have a true sense of fulfillment in your life. And the reason is that we were created to serve. And if we don't find that place to serve and that way to serve others, we will never really be fulfilled in who we were and how we were created to be. See, let me tell you something. Every one of you at some point is going to come to the end of your run. And you'll be at your own funeral. Y'all get to go to your own funeral. You know that, don't you? You'll be kind of dead, but you'll be there. And you'll be lying in a box, and you'll be there. And a bunch of people are going to stand up, and they're going to talk about your life. My question is, what do you want them to say about you? See, let me tell you what they're not going to say. They're not going to talk about how much money you made. They're not going to talk about the house you lived in. They're not going to talk about the car you drove. Well, they might at my funeral because they're going to wonder why this mega church pastor was driving a 20-year-old minivan, but they'll be just mocking me. So that's a different story. For the rest of us, what are they going to talk about? I'll tell you, at the end of your life, there is only one thing that really matters, and that is the difference you have made in the lives of other people. It's the only thing you leave behind. So I want to tell you about Jesus today and how he presented this. And it's an incredible story. It's in Matthew chapter 20, and you find Jesus at the very height of his ministry. I mean, he's really rocking, and people are coming around, and you can see, his star is rising. The disciples are noticing this. People are following. Things are going well. It's just a matter of time before, he gets elevated to some great place. And so John and James have a fantastic idea. Do you remember this? And they came to Jesus privately, or a little bit privately, along with their mother. Always bring your mom for backup. That's what I say. And so they come with their mother, and they say, so Jesus, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, when you come into your kingdom, would it be too much trouble for us to sit on your right hand and your left hand? And it says, and the other 10 heard it and were indignant. Do you know why they're indignant? Yeah, they didn't think of that. They didn't think of asking that these guys thought of it first. And so I love what Jesus did. See, Jesus did not take that moment to chastise their selfish ambition, but what he did was he turned it into a teachable moment. And what he did was he redirected the conversation, and he doesn't actually bawl them out at all. But what he does is he redefines greatness. And so we're going to look at that. And it's in Matthew chapter 20, verse 25. So this is Jesus' answer to them. And verse 25 says this, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them." Listen to this. "Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to be great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So what he does is he contrasts the greatness in the world and the greatness in God's kingdom. And he says, you know what they do. You've all seen the rulers of the Gentiles. And this is as true today as it was then, right? What do people do who are great or wealthy or noble or famous? What do? They lord it over other people. They control other people, and they expect them to serve them. That's what people with wealth do. And Jesus says this. He says, "It shall not be so amongst you." And then what he does is he redefines greatness. He says, "The greatest among you, let him be servant of all." And then he says, "The Son of Man," referring to himself, he said, "I did not come to be served. That's not why I'm here. I came to serve others and to give my life a ransom for many." And then he says this. You're going to hate this part, but let me tell you anyway. He says, "If you want to be my disciple," he says, "take up your cross and follow me." Oh, I don't know if I like that. How about you? Hey, here's the good news. He didn't say take up his cross. Nobody can take up his cross. Nobody can live like that. Nobody has to go to a crucifixion. When it talks about taking up your cross, what does that mean? We have that expression in life. Well, that's my cross to bear. Let me tell you what your cross to bear is. Your cross to bear is not your problems. You can say, "Oh, I can't pay my mortgage. It's my cross to bear." No, that's your stupidity to bear or whatever else. That's not your cross to bear. Your cross to bear is always related to how you have to serve others in this world. And that's the whole essence of it. It's all about serving others. And when Jesus says, take up your cross, and it's unique to you, and every one of us has a calling, and every one of us are created and put on this earth to serve others, and our cross to bear is to find that place where it hurts a little bit, and there's sacrifice to it, but we do serve others out of our commitment and service to God. That's what we do. So I'm going to give you 3 quick points on this, and the first one is this. The first one is, all you need to do is serve where you have opportunity. So people think, well, I want to serve God. I guess I have to go overseas. Why would you have to do that? You don't have to cross an ocean. Most of the time, all you have to do is cross the street. And your opportunity to serve is right there. But a lot of times, let's just be honest. We think a lot of tasks that are available to us, we think they're below us and beneath us. And one of the lessons I've learned in my years of Christianity is that there is no task below us, just as there was no task below Jesus. Did he not say, "I did not come to be served, but to serve"? How many remember the story when he washed his disciples' feet? And he took the towel and the basin and he knelt down and he washed those cracked, dirty, disgusting feet. He did the job, the lowest job of the lowest servant Jesus did to his disciples. What was he doing? He was given as an example that there is no job below us. And you know, when you look at the church, there's other places for you to serve in life. There are. There's places you can serve, all kinds of places you can serve. But there's nothing quite like the church, because the church is this place on a mission you believe in. The church is a place where lives are being transformed and marriages are being healed and people are coming to life, and you have a chance to serve and be a part of that. And all you have to do is to serve where you have to have opportunity. You don't have to look for some grand thing. The way I look at it, there's only 2 kinds of people. And they both come from Winnie the Pooh. And in fact, neither of them are actually people. They're animals. And the first type of person is Eeyore. How many remember Eeyore? Eeyore was the depressed donkey. And his big line was, "It'll never work." Always depressed, always down, always saw the dark side of everything. And there are people in this world, and you know them, and some of you are one, and it's Eeyore. But who was the other friend? Who was Winnie the Pooh's other friend? Anybody remember? Tigger. The absolutely contagious, energetic, and enthusiastic Tigger. And Tigger's line was this. It was, "Sure, that's what Tiggers do best." "Hey, Tigger, do you want to go for a walk?" "Sure, that's what Tiggers do best." "Hey, you want to go ice skating?" "Sure, that's what Tiggers do best." I mean, are you an Eeyore or are you a Tigger? You know, the wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tiggers are wonderful things. Their tops are made of rubbers, their bottom are made of springs. They're bouncy, flouncy, pouncy, pouncy, fun, 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 fun. The wonderful thing about Tiggies is I'm the only one. He's got his own theme song, people. Do you have a theme song? You know what? Eeyore doesn't have a theme song. People who are negative and, always down, they don't get theme songs. But people who are enthusiastic, people who are excited, do you have a theme song? I want a theme song. I'm going to live my life until I get a theme song. That's what my goal in life is. Because I want to be this guy that says, sure, that's what Tiggers do best. Let me tell you a little story about this. When Kathy and I became Christians years ago, just after we married, and we got part of this church, and this church was electric. People were getting saved in this church, and lives were being changed, and marriages were being healed, and all kinds of great things. And we didn't know anything from anything. We're brand new Christians. And we looked around, and we saw people busy doing things, and we thought, we'd really like to do something in this church, but we don't really feel like we have anything to offer. And so we thought, well, we'll just do, if somebody asks us to do something, we're just going to say yes to it. And one day they asked us if we would go and help park cars in the parking lot. You know what we said? We said, sure, that's what Tiggers do best. That's what we said. And so we went and parked cars, and then they asked us if we wanted to be greeters, and we said, sure, that's what Tiggers do best. And then we were greeters, and we served coffee, and we served meals, and when they had work bees on the weekend, they cleaning bees, and people cleaning chairs, they would say, would you come and clean chairs on Saturday morning? Sure. That's what Tiggers do best. And so we would just come along, and we were just these enthusiastic people with absolutely zero skills whatsoever, but what we lacked in skill, we made up for in enthusiasm. Now, here's what happened. People around us saw us, and they thought, wow, look at that young couple. They just love doing everything. And so this home group leader, this group leader that had this Bible study in their home, they spotted us, and they said, hey, would you guys like to come and assist us in our Bible study in our home? And we said, sure, that's what Tiggers do best. Do you not know the answer yet? That's the answer. We said, sure, that's what Tiggers do best. And so I'm just wondering if you can imagine this. We've been Christians for 6 months. We don't know anything. And we're the assistant home group leaders in a home group with people twice our age. And then after 3 months, those people moved on and put us in charge. I've been a Christian 8-9 months, and I'm now a Bible study teacher. Do you have any idea how bad a leader I was? No, you can't possibly know. I didn't know anything from anything. And every week I would show up and I would have no idea what I was teaching them, and neither would they. Now, I know some of you are looking at me and say, you know what? Things really haven't changed much then, have they? And it was just incredible that we were these new Christians, but what we did was we just kept on serving. And you want to know something? 3 decades later, we're still doing that. And I know you think that what I do is I just stand up here and we just preach, and that's, my wife, Kathy, still oversees the ushers and the greeters in this church. She's still doing it 3 decades later. And if you were here yesterday, and some of you were because we had a leadership conference this weekend, and if you were here, we serve our staff, and including myself and Kathy, we serve the leaders. And when they had lunch, guess who was up at the front serving them and ladling them the food? It was me, and it was Kathy, and there was the rest of our staff. You know why? I did not come into this world to be served, but to serve and to give my life a ransom for many. You just serve where you have opportunity. There is no job that is below any one of us. When we started the church is now 30 years old. When we started it, we rented a building. We just started, and there was a church that had closed their doors. And the building's still there, and it's on the corner of Grant and Nathaniel, and it's a Royal Bank today, right across from the Grant Park Mall. It's got a zigzag roof like this. Anyone recognize that building I'm describing? That was our church building. We were in there for a year. And so we had this building with this tiny little church plant congregation. And there was this big yard in front of it in those days. It's a parking lot now. But it was a big grass yard. And every Saturday, I would load up my lawnmower, and I would take it down to that church building, and I would be the one mowing the grass Saturday morning, so on Sunday, when the people showed up, the grass was cut. So one day, I'm out there mowing the grass like this, and one of our church members drives by and sees me mowing the grass. And he stops the car, and he says, Pastor Mark, what are you doing mowing the grass? I said, if I don't mow it, who's going to mow it? And he felt so guilty, thank God, that he offered to do it. And I never mowed the grass again. I felt like I'd pulled some sort of Tom Sawyer on him there. And he took over the job. He offered to do it, and he brought his lawnmower down. And the rest of the time, we were in that building. But here's the point I don't want you to miss. That job was not below me, and it's not below me even today. There's this story about this pastor, and he took on this new church, brand new church, and he'd just been hired. First week, job one, the first thing he did was he hired somebody to mow the grass. The board saw it. They called an emergency board meeting, and they said, you know what, Pastor, we have a bit of an issue about what you just did. You hired somebody to mow the grass, and you know our last pastor used to mow the grass himself. Have you ever given any thought to that? He says, yeah, I gave him a call. He says he's no longer interested. So the first thing is this simple. You simply serve where you have opportunity. Now, the second thing is be faithful in the small things. And I know people immediately, you don't say it, but you say, but you don't understand, Pastor Mark. I want to do something big. I want to go big. Do you? You want to do something big? You know how you do something big? You be faithful in the small things. Huh? Yeah, it's actually in the Bible. And I'll show it to you. Here's the scripture verse here, and it's actually, again, in the book of Matthew, verse 25, or chapter 25, verse 23. And his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Listen to this. You have been faithful in a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. Did you see the progression? How do you get to do something big in the kingdom of God? You be faithful in the small things. This is not complicated stuff, is it? Let me tell you a little story. So this year, Kathy and I just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. Thank you. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking 35 years? What, did you get married when you were 6? No, don't be ridiculous. I was 10. Kathy was 6. And it's been a good ride, 10 years, a happy marriage. Unfortunately, we've been married 35. But nevertheless, kidding aside, so on our 35th, we decided what we wanted to do was we wanted to do a tour of Eastern Europe. And we've been planning this for a couple of years, and we figured this was what our anniversary gift to ourselves was going to be. And I was really excited about it. And so this summer, this is what we did. And we went through Hungary and Slovakia and Austria, Bavaria, and the Czech Republic. And it was this amazing trip. Now, you know I'm a bit of a history buff, and I just love the history of the world, but to get up close and personal. And Eastern Europe is fantastic. I just can't tell you how incredible it is. The sights and the buildings and the architecture and the history. But the thing that was most appealing to me was that really what you do is you get up close and personal with 2,000 years of Christian history. I mean, it all played out right in front of you, and the remnants of it are right there, and you can't escape it. It's everywhere. And so I couldn't wait to go. And so sure, we saw all the wonderful natural things that you'd see, and you'd go to castles and palaces and churches and all of those things. But one of the things I do is I'm always on the lookout for the hidden hero stories, because I know they're always there. First day, I found my first one. So we're in the city of Budapest. They actually call it Budapest. And we're in the city of Budapest. And we see this statue, and it's of this man called Gellert. And so I thought, well, that's sort of interesting. And if you were to go look that word up, this is what you'd discover. You'd discover that it's normally referred to as this hotel. And here's the big hotel, and it's a beautiful hotel. And these are natural hot spring waters that go into this in this fabulous old hotel, and people stay there. And it's on Gellert Hill. And this hill has this church on it, and there was this monastery, just an incredible fairy tale monastery on the side of this hill. And then a little bit further towards the end of this hill is the statue of Gellert himself. And here he is. And then below the statue, there's this waterfall. And it comes down, and it's actually a man-made waterfall. And I knew it had to be symbolic of something, but I wasn't sure. And our guide actually I said, what's that? And he said, oh, that's Gellert. And he told the story that was like one paragraph long, and I thought there's got to be more to the story than that. So let me tell you the story of this man, because it's incredible. First of all, that wasn't even his name. His name was Gerardo, and he was an Italian monk from Venice, Italy, and he had decided in the year 1020 that he was going to go to the Holy Land. But he wasn't going by water across the Mediterranean Sea. He was going to go by land. And his travels took him through the kingdom of Hungary. And while he was traveling through Hungary, the king, Stefan I, heard that he was there. And see, Gelert, as they call him, he was this brilliant man. He knew Greek and he knew Latin and many languages, and he was highly educated. And so he ended up getting an audience with the king. And the king said to him, I want you to tutor my son, Emmerich. Now, here's how it works in those days, 1,000 years ago. If the king asked you to do something, you didn't actually have the right to say no. And so the king asked you to do it, what do? You do it. So he became the tutor to Emmerich. And for 10 years, he tutored young Emmerich. And let me tell you something, I think he probably did a pretty good job because the Catholic Church eventually canonized and made Emmerich a saint, and he's Saint Emmerich today, or that's what he's known of. So he probably did a pretty good job. While he was there in the palace, while he was tutoring this son, it became known that he was a great preacher. And what he was doing is he started to evangelize the people of Hungary, and there was a great move of God during the days of Gelert. Now you say, why were they calling him Gelert? Well, if you know anything about the Hungarian language, and there might be someone that speaks it here, it's like no other language on earth. There's no other language even related to it. The closest language related to Hungarian is Klingon. And so, even though his name was Gerardo, they called him, for whatever reason, in their language, they called him Gelert. And so, anyway, so he was doing this thing, and after 10 years, the king released him, and instead of going to the Holy Land, what he did was he went off into the forest, and he lived as a hermit, meditating before God for 7 years. And then what happened was Stefan actually conquered the region that the city of Budapest is in. And then he realized that this area was all pagan people that did not know Christ. And so what he did was he commissioned Gelert back into service again. And he says, I'm going to make you the bishop, and I want to send you back to this region, and I want you to evangelize these pagan people. So he said, okay. He now is a bishop. He goes to the area known today as Budapest, and they greeted him by killing him. End of story. And so that's the real story of Gelert. And so here's what our guide said. So we're traveling along that bridge you saw. I said to the guide, I said, what's that up there? He said, well, that's the statue of Gelert. He says, this is what happened. He said, the king sent him to the city to evangelize us pagans. He put it in the first person. He said, to evangelize us pagans, and he brought a big barrel of water to baptize us in. Instead, we took him, again, first person, he says, we took him, stuck him in the barrel, rolled him down the hill. When he wasn't dead at the bottom of the hill, we beat him to death. And then he says, then later on, we felt bad for what we did, so we built this statue to him. And then he says, and then we built a waterfall underneath it to signify him rolling down the hill with the water. This is what it signifies. And then he said this. Then he said this. But he says, but if you think about it, he got a statue, a hill, and a hotel named after him. He still went to heaven. So when you think about it, it all worked out just fine. I'm thinking to myself, it all worked out just fine? That's the way you look at this, and it all worked out just fine? And for the next 2 days, I couldn't get this story out of my head. And I'm thinking, it all worked out just fine? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, actually, it did work out just fine. Because you know what eventually happened? That entire region of Budapest all became evangelized, and they all became Christians. And it was because some man came and he gave his life to serve those people, and he died in the process. But the history tells us this, that the seed of the church is the blood of the martyrs. And so, yes, he did go to heaven, and yes, he did change his world because he was a man who was willing to be faithful in the small things he was asked to do. Because let me let you in on a little secret here. Your reward in heaven, you know how the Bible talks about how we would get rewards in heaven and how my house has many mansions? Do you know that your reward in heaven has nothing to do with what you actually accomplish on earth? Your reward in heaven has everything to do with whether you are faithful to what you were asked to do. And you're going to be surprised when you get to heaven, and you're going to find that there are Bible translators that were in Bolivia their whole life that you never heard of that are living in these big mansions. And there's inner city workers living in these big mansions. And there's little grandmas that spent their days on their knees praying for people that are living in these mansions. And you think, oh, Pastor Mark, you're going to get one of those mansions. Oh, I'm not so sure about that. Are you kidding? A televangelist getting a mansion in heaven? I'm pretty sure that I'll be going to heaven, but I'm also pretty sure I'm going to be living in a shack at the end of the alley. That's where I am. And you know what? The only consolation for me is Joel Osteen's going to be living in a dumpster in my back lane. kind of a jerk, aren't I? So the first thing is this, is you serve where you have opportunity. The second thing is you be faithful in the small things. And the last and final thing is this, is that you need to become part of a team. And you know, this whole idea of ministering and serving by yourself, it's for the birds and it's not biblical. We were never called to serve on our own, never called to go off and do our own thing. We are called to be part of a team and part of something else. And you know, all you have to do is look at the scripture. I mean, you look at Jesus. Before Jesus did any ministry, what was job one? Job one was to put together a team of 11 and 12 men. 11 managed to stick with him, but 12 men that would follow up after him. Now, first thing he did was he put together a team of 12 people. And then you look into the book of Acts and you read about the stories of Paul, and everybody talks about Paul and preaches this way. Well, Paul did this and Paul did that, and Paul went here and Paul went that. And you get this idea that he was traveling through all of Asia Minor all by his lonesome. And then you go read the actual story and you find out, except when he was in prison, he was always together with a team. And it's Paul and Barnabas, Paul and Silas, Paul and John Mark, Paul and Titus, Paul and Timothy. The list goes on and on. This was a man who understood team. And he understood being part of something bigger than himself. You see, there is no I in the word team, but there's two in the word idiot. Have you noticed that? It's just a thought. Any of you ever seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt? Any of you seen this movie? Here's what it looks like. And this was a true story about the Oakland A's baseball team. They were at the very bottom of the league. And this manager comes along, and what he does, usually a computer programming and analyzing stats of players, like RBIs and hits and all that stuff. They put together a team of people who have great individual stats, and they trade people, and they ended up having this winning team. And it was all based on what people could do individually. And let me let you in on a little secret, and somebody can be mad at me about this. You know that baseball is the only team sport that's not really a team sport? I mean, it's the only sport where you go up to bat all by your lonesome, and at that moment, your team doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you and the ball. And it's where your individual effort comes out, and it's really the only team sport like that. Every other team sport, you know how it works? It's about people having synergy and working together and knowing how to support the other person. And that's what team sports are really like. Isn't that right? Most sports are like that. Even in hockey, when they grade the players, you get a point for a goal and a point for an assist. Why? Because the assist is at least as important as the goal. In fact, some would argue more important. And so what we need to do is look for that place where we can be part of a team. And I'm going to close with one final story here. And it's a basketball story. Basketball is team sport, by the way. And the story is 1990, and it was Michael Jordan, and he was on the Chicago Bulls. Of course, one of the greatest players of all time. It's 1990, they're playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. Michael Jordan goes out on the court, and he scores a record-breaking 69 points in one game. Finally, towards the end of the game, the coach says, okay, Michael, enough, come out. And there was a third-string player by the name of Stacey King. And the coach says, Stacey, get in there, see what you can do. So he goes in for a layup, gets fouled, misses the layup, so he gets free throw. So he's got 2 free throws, he misses the first one, scores the second one, scores a grand total of 1 point in the whole game. After a less than illustrious career, he retires from the sport. He's being interviewed by Sports Illustrated. And they said, Stacey, when you look back at your career, what would you say the highlight of your career would be? And he says, without a doubt, it would have to be the night that Michael Jordan and I scored 70 points. See, that's what happens when we're on a team. When we're on a team, we don't just get the benefit of what we do, we get the benefit of what everybody else does. And that's why it's so important for us that Jesus said, the greatest among you, let him be servant of all. So what do you have to do? You have to serve where you have opportunity. Be faithful in the small things and be part of a team. Mother Teresa said, we can do few great things for God, only small things in great love.
Church of the Rock has services every Sunday at 1397 Buffalo Place, and we invite you to join us when you're in the Winnipeg area. If you'd like a booklet to help you understand more about God's gift of forgiveness and reconciliation through Jesus Christ, please contact us, and we'd be happy to send you a free copy of the Book of Hope. Visit our website at www.churchoftherock.ca. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.